The first time I saw the bulldozers rolling across my land, I felt a strange mixture of disbelief and fury. The machines moved with precision, their engines growling like predators staking out new territory, and yet the real shock wasn't the destruction, it was the casualness with which it happened. My family's land, my inheritance, my sanctuary since childhood, was being stripped away while I stood helpless, notebook in hand, watching the future I'd imagined for my children vanish beneath the steel tracks of construction vehicles. The letters had started arriving months earlier. Official-looking envelopes stamped with the insignia of the Willow Creek Homeowners Association, though official hardly described the audacity contained within. They spoke of community development, zoning adjustments, and necessary improvements. Each one carried a tone of polite inevitability, as if I were a minor inconvenience in a story that had already been written without me. The final straw was the meeting invitation, a cordial request that I attend a session where my opinion might be considered. I attended, of course. I had to see them face to face. In the fluorescent-lit meeting room, with walls adorned with model homes and glossy brochures, I met Richard Callahan, the HOA president. His silver hair gleamed under the harsh light, his suit immaculate, his smile sharp enough to cut glass. "David," he said, extending a hand, "we're just trying to do what's best for the neighborhood. You'll understand once you see the plans." I shook his hand, my fingers stiff, a faint tremor betraying my rage. "I understand perfectly," I replied, my voice calm but cold. "You're building on land you don't own." He laughed, a sound that had none of the warmth of genuine amusement. "Legally? We're within our rights. You'll see." That was the first lie. The first in a long string that would test the limits of my patience. By spring, the invasion had begun. Trucks rumbled down the dirt road leading into my property, kicking up clouds of dust that settled like an unwelcome blanket over the surrounding desert. Cranes swung with mechanical grace, lifting beams that would become walls, roofs, and hallways. I stood at the edge of the clearing, notebook and camera in hand, documenting everything. Every delivery, every permit, every handshake and signature. It was tedious work, but vital. Neighbors watched from a distance. Some nodded sympathetically. Others whispered, taking bets on how long it would take me to cave. A few, more audacious, came close to gloat. I remember one woman, Margaret Hensley, a sharp-eyed local realtor, posing for selfies in front of the first house completed. She smiled as if the victory belonged to her personally. I didn't move. I didn't speak. I let her take her pictures, her mockery preserved forever in digital pixels. I could have stopped them then. I could have raised hell, called in the county sheriff, even contacted state authorities. But I didn't. Because I had learned long ago that patience, when wielded like a blade, is more dangerous than immediate rage. I would let them finish. I would let them flaunt their victory. Let them parade their new neighborhood, celebrate their triumphs, and toast with champagne on lawns that weren't theirs. Let them believe they had won. And then, everything would change. Construction stretched into the sweltering Arizona summer. Day after day, the sun beat down on rooftops and scaffolding, the heat pressing down on me as I surveyed the growing neighborhood. I kept a journal, noting every interaction, every overlooked regulation, every possible legal misstep. Clara Jenkins, my attorney and longtime confidant, visited frequently. She was lean, sharp, and utterly fearless, exactly the person you want when confronting bureaucratic arrogance. "They're overconfident," Clara said one morning as we huddled in my truck, watching workers haul shingles to a half-finished roof. "They think they can bully you out of this. They're wrong." "I know," I said, though the truth was more complicated. I knew the law was on my side. But I also knew that lawsuits can be messy, expensive, and unpredictable. For now, I needed to wait, to watch, to let their hubris build like a pressure cooker. By midsummer, the first houses were finished. Streets were paved, lawns manicured, and mailboxes installed. I walked among them silently, taking photographs, measuring boundaries, noting any sign that could later be used in court. Each home was a monument to the HOA's arrogance, a carefully constructed trap that they didn't even know they had set for themselves. Residents began moving in. Children ran across sidewalks, dogs barked in backyards, and the scent of fresh paint mingled with the desert air. I observed from the shadows, unnoticed and underestimated. Aaron and Lily McBride, a young couple with wide eyes and naive smiles, moved into one of the homes. They waved as I passed, oblivious to the storm brewing beneath the surface. I didn't wave back. My hand remained at my side, my eyes fixed on the horizon. I could see their hope, their belief in a safe, permanent home. And I knew, with a cold certainty, that all of that would eventually crumble, not because I wished it, but because justice demanded it. One afternoon, Richard Callahan himself approached me. He leaned casually against my truck, sipping a bottle of water as if we were old friends sharing idle gossip. "You're still here," he said. "Watching. Judging. You should relax, David. It's all going perfectly." I let him speak, my silence stretching long enough to make him uncomfortable. "Perfectly," I echoed finally, my voice even, controlled. "If your goal was to build on stolen land, then yes, perfectly." He smiled, a thin, sharp-edged thing that didn't reach his eyes. "Lawyers, paperwork, technicalities, we've taken care of everything. Why fight a losing battle?" "Because the battle isn't lost," I said. "Not yet." That night, I walked the perimeter of the land. The wind swept across the empty fields surrounding the new neighborhood, carrying the scent of dust, pine, and cement. I imagined the homes as chess pieces, each one vulnerable, each one a step toward my inevitable victory. The board was set. The pieces were in place. And when the time came, the first move would trigger a cascade they couldn't stop. I remembered my grandfather's voice, the stories he told about resilience, patience, and strategy. I felt the weight of my family's history pressing down on me, a reminder that some battles are won not through immediate confrontation, but through careful observation, timing, and the unwavering knowledge that justice is inevitable. By the end of the summer, 96 homes stood proudly on what had once been my land. Streets gleamed, trees swayed in the gentle breeze, and the HOA threw a barbecue that would be remembered for weeks. They toasted to their triumph, laughed at my supposed defeat, and paraded their arrogance as if it were a crown. I watched them from a distance, silent and still, a ghost among the living. Every smile, every cheer, every clap of hands was fuel for the storm I was preparing. I let them finish. I let them celebrate. Because I knew that in the end, when the courtrooms opened and the evidence was laid bare, their celebration would turn to despair. And I would reclaim everything. The neighborhood hummed with life, oblivious to the quiet tension building beneath the surface. Children's laughter echoed across freshly paved streets, sprinklers hissed rhythmically over lawns that were too perfect to be real, and the scent of barbecues drifted lazily through the warm Arizona air. It was a postcard-perfect scene, the kind that might make anyone believe that peace had finally settled over Willow Creek. But I knew better. I walked slowly along the main street, notebook in hand, eyes scanning every detail. Each mailbox, each street sign, each freshly painted door was a reminder of the HOA's audacity. They had built 96 homes on my land, thinking that completing them would secure ownership. They had no idea that I had been watching from the shadows, documenting every irregularity, every misstep, every fraudulent approval. And now, I waited. Patiently. Clara Jenkins, my attorney, was a constant presence. She didn't just advise, she strategized like a seasoned general preparing for war. Her sharp eyes missed nothing, her mind racing ahead, calculating every potential countermove. "You've let them build, David," she said one evening as we surveyed the neighborhood from a small hill overlooking the houses. The sunset painted the rooftops in streaks of gold and crimson, making them look almost ethereal. "Now, we use that to our advantage. They're arrogant, they're careless, and they think the law is on their side. They're wrong." I nodded, taking in the view. The irony wasn't lost on me. Each house, each street, each perfectly pruned tree was a testament to their hubris. They had invested everything into a fantasy, blind to the reality beneath their feet. Every completed home was a time bomb, waiting for the right moment to explode. The first residents moved in during early autumn. I observed them discreetly, noting their routines, listening to their conversations, and recording anything that might be relevant to the legal case. Some of them were genuinely kind, others blissfully naive, and a few seemed suspiciously self-important. Aaron and Lily McBride, the young couple I had noticed before, were still settling in. Their wide-eyed wonder at their new home was almost tragic. They were living atop a legal powder keg, unaware that the ground beneath their feet would soon shift. It was during this period of apparent calm that the HOA began to make mistakes, small ones, subtle ones, but critical. Richard Callahan's overconfidence grew with each passing day. He stopped consulting with their legal team on certain approvals, assuming the neighborhood's completion had insulated him from any challenge. Board members started leaving official documents lying around in their clubhouse, filing errors that would later prove invaluable. I photographed everything. Every misstep was a thread I could pull. One afternoon, as the sun dipped low, Clara and I met at the property line, hidden among the scrubby mesquite and desert grasses. "They're overextended," she murmured, her eyes scanning the streets below. "They think finishing the construction means victory, but they've set themselves up perfectly for legal collapse." I smiled faintly. "It's almost beautiful," I said. "The way they believe they've won, it's their downfall waiting to happen." Clara didn't flinch at my cold humor. She had always understood the art of patient strategy. "We prepare the lawsuits carefully. Every deed, every permit, every contract. If they try to argue residents' rights, we counter with ownership claims, fraudulent approvals, and zoning violations. It will be thorough. Brutal. And it will work." The next weeks were spent in quiet observation and meticulous documentation. I walked the streets during different times of the day, noting which construction crews had been paid improperly, which utilities had been installed without proper authorization, and which boundary markers had been moved. I had every detail logged, every discrepancy photographed, every false claim recorded. The law favored preparation, and I had more than enough evidence to bring the entire HOA crashing down. Occasionally, residents approached me. Some asked for advice, some simply wanted to introduce themselves. Aaron and Lily McBride came up one afternoon, their arms loaded with groceries. "David," Lily said, her voice bright and hopeful, "we just wanted to thank you again for everything. We heard about the property issues, and we wanted to make sure we're doing everything legally." I studied them quietly. They were innocent, genuinely unaware of the storm they were standing in the middle of. "You're safe for now," I said finally, choosing my words carefully. "But the HOA's claims are complicated. Best to stay informed and document everything." They smiled, misunderstanding my calm warning as friendly advice. I let them go, knowing that their ignorance was part of the strategy. The fewer people knew about the pending legal battle, the more leverage I would have when the time came. Richard Callahan, meanwhile, grew bolder. He sent letters offering partial settlements, trying to convince me to relinquish my claim in exchange for a small fraction of the land or some form of financial compensation. Each letter was polite but dripping with arrogance. "We can resolve this amicably," he wrote. "No need for costly litigation." I didn't respond. Not yet. Each letter became more desperate, more revealing of the HOA's internal fear and uncertainty. They thought they could intimidate me, thinking that their wealth and influence would be enough to sway the outcome. But they had underestimated the value of patience, planning, and precise legal strategy. By late autumn, the neighborhood was fully occupied. The last house had been delivered, its windows gleaming in the low sun, the front yard immaculate, a welcome mat at the door. The HOA threw another celebratory event, a subtle display of dominance that was meant to solidify their apparent victory. I watched from a distance, concealed among the mesquite trees, notebook and camera at the ready. They laughed, toasted, and clapped each other on the back, unaware that each cheer was a nail in the coffin of their arrogance. Clara and I spent nights poring over the legal documents, cross-referencing deeds, surveying maps, and preparing for every possible counter-argument the HOA's lawyers might raise. Every oversight, every falsified signature, every zoning infraction was logged. We built a legal web so intricate that once the first thread was pulled, the entire structure would unravel. And yet, despite the meticulous preparation, I didn't feel glee. The calm before the storm was a strange, almost surreal time. I walked through empty streets at dawn, watching mist curl around the freshly paved roads, and felt the weight of what was coming. This wasn't just about property, it was about justice, integrity, and reclaiming what was rightfully mine. Every house, every tree, every mailbox on my land would be restored to its rightful ownership, and yet I understood the human cost. Some residents would be caught in the fallout, their dreams colliding with the reality of the law. Still, the principle mattered more. Richard Callahan and the HOA had gambled with arrogance, believing they could bend reality with charm and deceit. They had forgotten that some battles are won not with force, but with patience, strategy, and an unyielding commitment to what is right. As the first hints of winter approached, I felt a quiet satisfaction. 96 homes stood on my land, every street meticulously laid, every lawn perfectly manicured, every resident blissfully unaware of the storm gathering over their heads. The neighborhood was a living, breathing monument to arrogance, and soon, it would become a monument to justice. Clara looked at me one evening as we packed up our files in the dim light of the truck. "Soon," she said softly. "The storm will come, and they won't know what hit them." I nodded, staring out at the rooftops glowing in the setting sun. "Let them celebrate," I said. "Let them believe they've won. Because the moment we strike, everything changes." And in that quiet, tense moment, I knew it was only a matter of time. Patience had been my weapon, and the calm before the storm was ending. The real battle, the one that would reclaim everything that was mine, was about to begin. The courtroom smelled of polished wood, paper, and tension. A hush fell as the judge entered, robes swaying, gavel in hand. I could feel the weight of the past months of meticulous observation, patient strategy, and unwavering resolve pressing down on me. Every piece of evidence Clara and I had collected over the months now lay before the court. Every photograph, every document, every notarized claim was a brick in the fortress of justice we had built. Richard Callahan sat at the front of the room, shoulders rigid, jaw tight. His silver hair no longer gleamed with confidence but with worry. The other members of the HOA board fidgeted, whispering to one another, their arrogance replaced by a creeping panic. They had built a paradise on stolen land, and now paradise was turning into a courtroom battleground. Clara approached the podium first. She was calm, poised, and lethal in her focus. Her presence alone commanded attention. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady, "we are here to determine the rightful ownership of 96 homes built on land that has been, for decades, the property of Mr. David Langston. What has been presented by the HOA as legitimate development is, in reality, a calculated overreach and blatant disregard for legal ownership." She paused, letting her words hang in the air like a storm cloud. Then she launched into the evidence, meticulously, systematically, unrelentingly. Deeds, survey maps, zoning violations, forged signatures, fraudulent permits. Each revelation landed like a hammer strike, and I could see the subtle shift in the courtroom. A few residents whispered among themselves, their expressions darkening as the reality of their situation began to crystallize. Richard Callahan's lawyers tried to interject, to present counterclaims about residents' rights and supposed good faith investments. Clara dismantled each argument with precision, her voice cutting through the objections with surgical accuracy. "Your client's claims cannot override the documented ownership of the property," she said. "The HOA acted without authority. They assumed ownership by deception. Justice cannot bend to arrogance." The residents, once smiling and carefree, now shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Aaron and Lily McBride sat near the front, holding hands, their eyes wide. I could see the fear mingling with confusion in their expressions. Their dream homes, their sanctuary, were about to slip through their fingers not because of malice, but because reality could not be rewritten to suit someone else's greed. Hours passed. Witnesses were called. Experts in property law and real estate boundaries testified to the undeniable truth: the land had always belonged to me. Each statement was a drumbeat of inevitability. Richard Callahan and the board members squirmed in their seats, glancing at one another with barely concealed panic. The arrogance that had fueled them during the construction was gone. Now, the full weight of their actions bore down upon them. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the judge leaned forward, gaze sweeping the room. "I have reviewed the evidence, the claims, and the testimonies," he said. His voice was measured, deliberate. It is clear that the land in question was unlawfully developed by the Willow Creek Homeowners Association. Ownership of the property shall revert to Mr. David Langston, and any structures built there shall be subject to his discretion. The HOA has acted in bad faith, and restitution is required. The words struck like a gavel pounding the final note of a symphony. A murmur ran through the courtroom. The residents gasped, some sitting frozen, stunned. Richard Callahan's face went pale, the board members slumped, defeated. They had thought they had won. They had thought that completion equaled victory. But the law, meticulously documented and argued, had no tolerance for arrogance. I felt a strange calm as I walked to the front. Clara was beside me, eyes shining with quiet triumph. I met Richard Callahan's gaze. He had always been certain, always confident. Now, the confidence was gone, replaced with a hollow realization that his entire empire on my land had been built on lies. This land, I said, my voice low but firm, has belonged to my family for decades. You thought you could take it with charm, deception, and money. You were wrong. Some residents looked at me with anger. Others, like the McBrides, looked with uncertainty, their hopes teetering on the edge. I addressed them directly, my tone steady. I understand the hardship this causes. But the law cannot favor wrongdoing. Some of you may choose to negotiate settlements to remain. Others may need to leave. The decisions are yours, but the property belongs to its rightful owner. Outside the courtroom, chaos ensued. Reporters swarmed, cameras flashing, capturing every moment of the HOA's downfall. Calls were made, interviews conducted, and the news spread like wildfire. Willow Creek had been built on stolen land, and the world now knew it. Back on my property, I walked the streets that had once been occupied by strangers. The houses, the streets, the trees, they were mine again, though some residents had chosen to stay under negotiated terms. The neighborhood that had been a symbol of arrogance and overreach was now a monument to patience, strategy, and justice. Every house that remained had been validated through proper ownership agreements, every abandoned plot stood as a reminder of consequences. I paused in front of the McBride's home. They had chosen to stay under a legal agreement that respected my ownership while allowing them to live there lawfully. I smiled faintly. Your home is safe, provided the agreements are honored, I said. Their relief was palpable, a reminder that the law protects more than just property, it protects fairness, integrity, and truth. Richard Callahan and his board faced more than just losing the land. Civil suits, fines, and criminal investigations loomed on the horizon. Their arrogance had cost them everything: reputation, power, and the illusion of control. Watching them leave the courtroom, their heads low, I felt no triumph in cruelty. Instead, there was clarity. Justice had been served. Clara nudged my shoulder as we walked back toward the truck. Well played, David, she said softly, her voice carrying a hint of pride. They'll never underestimate patience and preparation again. I looked out over the land, the golden light of the setting sun casting long shadows across the streets. 96 homes, each a testament to meticulous planning, now rested under rightful ownership. The calm of justice had replaced the chaos of arrogance. Some victories, I realized, are not celebrated with noise or fanfare. Some are quiet, deliberate, and profound, resting in the knowledge that what was taken by deception has been reclaimed by diligence. I felt the weight of my grandfather's legacy, the years of stewardship, and the resilience of a family bound to the land. And for the first time in months, I allowed myself a moment of relief. The storm had passed, leaving a landscape that was mine once again. I knew challenges would arise: legal adjustments, resident negotiations, the ongoing responsibilities of property ownership, but those were minor compared to the triumph of reclaiming what had been unlawfully taken. I turned to Clara one last time, the desert wind tousling her hair. It's done, I said. She smiled, a mixture of pride and relief. Yes. But remember, patience was our greatest weapon. Never forget that. I nodded, breathing in the scent of the land, dust, pine, and freshly turned earth. Every inch of it belonged to me once more. Every tree, every street, every house told a story of patience, strategy, and justice. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky with streaks of red and gold, I walked the streets of Willow Creek, fully aware that the victory was not just legal but deeply personal. The land was mine again, restored to its rightful place in my family's legacy. The HOA had overreached, and I had proven that even the most audacious arrogance could not withstand methodical preparation, patience, and unwavering commitment to what is right. For the first time, I smiled, not at their defeat, but at the clarity that justice, when pursued with precision and integrity, always prevails. And in the quiet, golden light of evening, the land felt alive again, a living reminder that some victories are best savored silently, beneath the open sky, where no one can take them away.